I've got a 2008 Toyota Tundra, second generation, passenger side manifold. I tried to look around and find some videos for how I would go about replacing the manifold. I can't find anything. So, why am I replacing it? Well, right up in there, there's this connection between the manifold and the secondary air intake, and it is leaking. In fact, it broke off entirely when I changed the secondary air intake valve. So, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I don't think I can possibly fit a new manifold in from the wheel well. And there's definitely no way I can see it fitting in from the top, although I plan to remove this for access to bolts. So that leaves me with one option, best I can see, and that is to remove the catalytic converters in this section of the exhaust here and use this area in here as the access for my manifold. So I'm going to get started seeing if I can get these bolts off and these bolts off. There are two. Let's see, there's one, and then there's another O2 sensor probably. So I plan to unplug those. Let's give it a try, see what happens. Alright, so I got it out. As you can see, we have one plug here, a couple clips, unplugged it. Over here, unplugged it. On the back, we had two. There's a tool I use to get the bolts out. Had two of these 14 millimeter bolts. They actually came out pretty easy. You can see there's a seal here. Gonna have to get another one of those. And over here on this side, I got another one. Now this one came with the kit I got from the manifold, so I'm good for that one. Now up here, I took these three nuts off first, and the nuts came off pretty easy. Then I thought, oh, let's take the studs out. Well, the first one came out. The second one, well, it just snapped a little piece on the end off. I was using for that this E10. Anyhow, so the other ones are still in the manifold. And the way I was able to get this out, at first I thought I had to get the studs out in order to get it out, because it's kind of tight in there. But here, I'll show you what I did. So, up under here, what I did was I just put my feet back there and pushed backwards against the exhaust system. And that gave me just enough room to drop that stuff out. As you can see, the other studs are still in the manifold. They're pretty tight. So, got that piece out. Okay, the next step I'm going to do here is to remove the oil dipstick. So right there's the bottom of it. I'm going to go around up top and unbolt it. But first I'm going to take my air compressor and blow that area out a little bit, so hopefully I don't get any dirt down in my oil. Okay, back up top. You can see I got to take my oil dipstick out. And the bolt I need to get out, I believe, is that one there. So I'm going to go for that. I think there's a clip where a wiring harness attaches about there. And I'm going to take this air box out to start making my life a little easier up here. Alright, so I loosened that, pulled this off, loosened my 3 clamps, or 4 clamps. Pull this, oh, there's a plug here, take that off, pop the clip out. That comes out. This comes out. Now I'll get at the bolts to hold the bottom in. Okay, there are two 10 millimeter bolts, one there, one over there, and this guy just kind of wiggles out and up. I took out that 10 millimeter bolt. I squeezed the little clip so it would pop out of the wiring harness clip would pop out. You can see the wiring harness clip right there. Okay, and now supposedly this just pulls out There's an O-ring at the bottom, so it might need a little pop to get it started. There it goes. I'll put the camera down and wriggle on this thing for a little bit. Alright, there she is. I just had to kind of turn it, I think it was clockwise, and it kind of came out. And on the end there is the O-ring. Probably need to try to find a new one. Okay, next I'm going to try to take the heat shield off. There's 3 bolts that hold it on. 1, 2, and there's a third I already took out up in there. With like a foot long extension and my little drill driver, I was able to just zip those right out. So let's get it done. Back up underneath the truck. I'm going to see if I can wiggle the heat shield out this way. I tried it before I took the dipstick out and I could not get it. And once again, I'm going to put the camera down so I can use 2 hands on this. Took a little doing, but I got it out. Could not get that out with the oil dipstick in. Back to the wheel well. Now I want to start hitting all of the bolts with some WD-40. And maybe I'll then let it sit while I eat lunch. So I think I'm going to take the wheel off at this point, give me a little better access. Got the truck jacked up now and the wheel off, supported with a couple of jack stands. And now the fun part begins. I have to find all of the bolts. I'm going to spray them and then start trying to figure out how I get those suckers out in this rather tight space. So I guess let the fun begin. I did the best I can to spray each of the, I counted 8 bolts. I also removed 2 nuts off of this tube that comes from the secondary air intake. You can see I got this wired together, trying to keep it from leaking. I need to cut that off too. This is what I'm starting out with. 12 millimeter. And I've got a little angle, a little knuckle joint here. First one came right off. Right up in there. Zipped it right off. So I'm going to start working on the other ones. I think I might loosen a couple of these brackets just to get this stuff flexible to move around. So I'm on the 4th bolt so far. And as you can see, with a impact driver and a little knuckle. So far, so good. Again, I'm on the 4th one. I've gotten 7 of the bolts out, or the nuts. Now, the last one here, I think it's the last, is in a rather tricky place to get. Let's see if I can lay eyes on it here. It is right there. So I'm gonna try this with my extension and various socket ends and see if I can get at it or not. And the last last nut did come off. As you can see, this is loose now. I'm gonna go down underneath and try to wiggle it out from the back. I'm having some trouble sliding this out, so I'm going to try taking that nut and that nut off and see if that little bracket on the top gives me enough room to slide it out. Okay, it's out. That last bolt was took a little bit of doing. That was a bad angle. I managed to get it out with the extension and the knuckle and a short 12 millimeter socket that was only half slid on the extension. Yeah, I know, it was crazy, but it worked. Now, an important disclaimer at this point. I was dreading this job. This is a Texas truck. I grew up in upstate New York. I don't even know if this job would be possible if I lived there. This thing would have just been a mass of rust. So, I mean, just take that into account. Kind of important to remember your location and how badly rusted the components are may determine whether or not this is doable, or whether you're going to be snapping off studs in the engine and all that. So, anyway, I've been very pleasantly surprised. Here's my my replacement. Okay, this is, I believe it's a Dorman replacement. And you can see, okay, let me show you a couple things that I like and don't like. Looks like this secondary air intake component is welded all the way around. The old one appears to just be crimped or something. That's some mess that I put on there, glue. Okay, the ports. Oh, here's a pretty glaring error in my new one. Let's see if I can make it work anyway. Let's take a look at the face of this, right? All flat, smooth. Take a look at this. There's a recess, okay? And I think there's supposed to be. There is supposed to be, because look, they welded it on backwards. Genius. Maybe that's why it was so well priced. Rock Auto Specialty. Anyhow, the other thing too is you'll notice that this pipe is recessed back in by about 1/4 of an inch, whereas here it's almost flush. Well, that creates a problem because over here, this, as you see, needs to seat inside of this. So, I think I could probably survive not having this beveled edge, although I'd prefer it. But I'm going to have to do something to make that fit. Either grind this down in here, which will be a trick, or maybe cut a little bit of this off. I don't need the whole thing to hold the gasket because the gasket slides down, you can see. So I may cut that extra off. All right, the other thing, last but not least, so the actual intake ports, you can see here how it looks on the original. Kind of cut deep here and at an oval versus the replacement. Looks good, looks good, looks good. Oh, check that out. Seems like that could restrict some exhaust flow. So I'm wondering if I need to get a grinder somehow and grind that hole bigger. Again, not an easy thing. I don't know if I have the right tool for it. But anyhow, I'm going to see what I can do. See if I can make this work, because now my truck's apart and I need it running. I have ground that down on the inside. Probably taking it down. It's not a full 1/4 inch recess. Probably a little bit less than that. But significantly improved over what it was. I used this. It's just a abrasive cut-off blade, and I cut it down to a small size using none other but another abrasive diamond blade. Anyhow, it worked all right. Now when I put the two together, I just have a small gap about the width of what I figure the depth of this bevel is. That again is missing on this new one. So my plan is to use 3 washers that are about the depth of that, because the whole purpose for this, I believe, is when these two pieces crush together, that bevel accounts for the matching of the seal, the gasket. So if I just bolt these two together all the way right now, it's going to crush the seal, about 1/8 of an inch more than it normally would. So that's where 3 washers on here instead should do. Now, the second thing I want to work on is opening that up a little bit. So I found had this laying around. Let's see if that'll work. Put that in a tool. All right, so I worked with this for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And it's not perfect, but it's opened up considerably more than it was before. I could grind on it more, but I don't want to take a chance of getting in any of the welds. It's closer now to what the other ones are. I'm going to take the air compressor now and blow this off, get all the metal chips and stuff out. Time to start putting things back together. I took a wire brush tool and cleaned that up. Both ends. Get a better seal. Here's what came in the kit. Of course, I got the manifold. I got the gasket against the engine, the gasket to that secondary air intake, gasket to the catalytic converter. I purchased, and then the studs to go in here, and the nuts and lock washers. I purchased another one of these to go on the back side of that catalytic converter, so I'll get a good seal when I put that back in. I installed these studs by just putting a little Loctite on them, getting them started. Then I put this on, used my little impact driver to zip that in till it went all the way through. And then I just grabbed a hold of the back with my pliers like that, and then I could just back the nut right off. This is kind of obvious, but make sure you remove the old gasket. I cleaned up the mating surfaces a little bit, using a scraper and then a little light fine steel wool. Just kind of cleaned it up a little bit, and then I'm going to put the new gasket on and the new gasket for the secondary air intake up there. I've got the manifold back in, just one bolt. I just put one little nut on there to hold it, and then I went ahead and I reattached here. The only thing I'm seeing that I don't particularly love is there's some contact between, let's see if I can get it. Right here, there's a little contact between this secondary airflow tube structure and the engine block. So when I tighten that up, I may put a little metal shim in here or something. Just see if I can pull that away a little bit. But for now, I just want to make sure it tightens up good. All right, the most challenging bolt on this whole thing and how I got to it. Very long extension. And at the top, you'll see I've got a knuckle and I've got a short, let's see if I can get another view of it. I've got a short socket on the end of there. And once you get it almost in, just the length of the stud, it almost comes off this, you almost have to put a space between the knuckle and the socket, if you know what I mean, like not fully insert it to get it to work. Got all my bolts on, or nuts, and I'm ready to torque. From what I've looked up, it's 15 foot-pounds. I'm gonna go around and torque each one now. Got the catalytic converters back in. And remember to make sure you put a new gasket in between there. Tighten that up. And there are the 3 bolts for the connection between the catalytic converter and the manifold. Went ahead, put in the new studs, tighten those up. And the one thing that's going to look a little different, hopefully, than if you do this job, is you can see up here, I put washers in between here. Why? Well, if you watched the video earlier, you saw that whoever manufactured this particular manifold put the flange on backwards, and a little recess in the flange is on the top instead of the bottom. So without a recess, I figure those washers are about the same depth as that recess, which would allow for the proper compression of the gasket in between these two components. All right, well, this is doable. You can do it. I didn't know if it was, but especially here in the South where bolts don't seize, and all you salty land folks, don't be haters. I had to deal with it for 20 years myself, but not now. So gotta finish up a few little things, go up inside engine compartment, put my air box back in, and I'll be ready to start this baby up and see how she sounds. All right, so a couple closing thoughts to wrap this up. Here's the equipment that I used. This is the Dorman manifold I put in. Would I recommend it? No. You saw, if you watched this video, how much I had to do to make it fit correctly. It's about 170 bucks, so oh well. This is the gasket that goes behind the catalytic converter section that needs to come out also. This did not come with the kit, so I bought that separately at O'Reilly's Auto. A couple last thoughts. Don't forget to plug your catalytic, on the catalytic converter section, don't forget to plug the O2 sensors back in. Don't forget you need to put the, you're gonna have to put the oil dipstick back in. Remember, taking it out, it's a clockwise spin to get it out, and putting it back in, it's counterclockwise. That's what I found worked for me, because it is a little bit of a tricky fit. Now, I'm pretty pleased with the final product. I took it for a drive, and I'm not getting any sound out of there. I put my hand up around the connections. I'm not getting any exhaust leaking as far as I can tell. So at the end of the day, I'm a happy camper. Once again, just a word of warning, if you live in one of the states where you get a lot of salt, you may watch this and be like, hey, this is an easy afternoon project. I grew up in upstate New York. I think it would have been a nightmare to do this job on a truck from up there. Who knows? But I could definitely see snapped off studs and just a lot of trouble. So, is it possible? Absolutely. Is it easy? Well, you know, if you've got a little mechanical skill and a truck that's clean like this, I think you could do it in probably, if you give yourself a day, maybe 6-7 hours of solid work time. Gives you a little learning curve time. If I did it again, I could probably do it in 4 or 5 hours. If I had the right manifold that didn't need to be messed with. So, you can do it. 2nd generation Tundra, passenger side exhaust manifold with that awful leak that apparently Toyota knows is an issue, but hey, it is what it is. If you've got one of these and you want to get rid of that leak, you can do it. Good luck with your projects.